Welcome to Outspoken, where we dive deep into the topics and intersection of technology, money, business, and passion. I'm your host, Shana Cosgrove.
I've now started realizing it really boils down to a really basic prescription that is simple and still hard, which is don't be an asshole. I say consistently, just find your village. It has to be a village that is unconditionally supportive. I'm not going to let those jerks who are cutting corners and cheating, I'm not letting them win. So I'm going to keep coming at them. And sometimes they're going to win, sure. But in the long run, I'm proving that the good people can actually do good work.
At Nyla Technology Solutions, we believe America's warfighters deserve the absolute best technology advantage on the battlefield. We are an AI engineering company focused on helping the Department of War move faster, think smarter, and achieve true information dominance. Our team builds mission-ready artificial intelligence, advanced data platforms, and decision advantage capabilities that help leaders see clearly and act decisively. In a world where the speed of information can determine victory, Nyla is committed to delivering strength through innovation, ensuring our nation stays secure, competitive, and ready for whatever comes next. Nyla Technology Solutions is an SBA-certified 8A, woman-owned small business. Our contract vehicles include GSA Mass, 8A Stars 3, and MDA Shield. For more information, partnering opportunities, or the latest job openings, please check out our website, www.nyla.io, or email us at hello@nyla.io. Today, I'm here with Lauren Wittenberg Weiner, and she has written a book, Unruly, about her journey from starting a business by herself to selling it for over $100 million.
One, I did not start it by myself. I did have a partner, but I also had a phenomenal team.
Okay.
We were $100 million in annual revenue. Our actual sale price, definitely not disclosed.
Perfect. Thank you for the correction. It is really outstanding. I have been in government contracting my entire career. I started my own business in 2013, and there aren't a lot of women-owned businesses who get past the small business size to a large business size.
For sure.
It has been my personal mountain. So I am very excited to talk to you, to hear about the journey of which you've done, and then your book that you wrote as well.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you.
So tell us a little bit about your company that you started.
So it started literally because I couldn't find a job overseas. And my eventual partner was another military spouse who was stationed over in Italy with me. I was going to go home because I was done. I had come out of the White House and had a really good job and then smacked straight into a brick wall when I got overseas.
Just chill and enjoy
No.
like you were a military spouse.
I was so not built for that. First of all, we didn't have kids yet. We had just gotten married. I had been working in the White House. I'd been working like 100-hour weeks, 120-hour weeks pretty consistently.
Like pasta and wine every day.
Oh, I tried. Shana, I tried for like, I don't know, probably a few weeks before I lost my mind. And my poor husband would come home from work and I'd be like, hi, how you doing? What's going on? Can we talk? And so I think my marriage would have gone off the rails if I had not worked again fairly soon. I did everything I possibly could. I started teaching on base. I started trying to come up with as much stuff as I possibly could to keep me busy. And the woman who became my business partner was a lawyer. And she said, you know what? Let's just incorporate a business for you to do some consulting back to the States until you can get home and really restart your career. That's what we did. We called it Wittenberg Weiner Consulting. And it was supposed to be just for me to get project-based work, right? Instead of a 1099, because that's not safe. So that was it. That was what it was supposed to be. Instead, somebody turned to me and said, hey, wait a second. I need someone smart to do some analysis. We got that in place. It was for 1.5 people. And then we just grew. That first couple of years, it was truly just organic. It was, can you do? Yup. Can you do? Yup. Whatever you need. And so we eventually got more strategic in our growth. But that first 2 or 3 years, it was like, I can do that. We can do that. Don't care what that is. Like anti-terrorism force protection. Sure. I know nothing about that.
Let's pause.
How did you have the chutzpah to just be like, okay, sure, I will take that on and sign a contract saying that I will complete this mission critical need, and yeah, I'll figure it out. Where does that come from?
A couple of things. One, I had worked in the White House for 4 years at this point, doing all sorts of stuff that I had no business doing. That was the way the office that I was in was set up. We had 3 or 4 or 5 agencies, cabinet level agencies under us at any given time, and they switched us around a lot. So I had to know everything there was to know about education policy and labor policy and housing policy and health policy. And so I learned how to leverage the experts around me to get smart and deep dive into something, but know that I had enough wherewithal to figure it out. That was number one. And number two, I had great people around me. The first customer we had in anti-terrorism force protection, I had no idea what ATFP was at the time, but he was like, I got you. I need someone smart to do this piece of it. I can give you all the rest of it. If I knew exactly what I needed to do, I knew I was smart enough and motivated enough to figure it out. Then I hired great people around who were also smart enough and motivated enough. I certainly wasn't ever doing operation stuff, gun toting. That was never going to happen. Until I had a team that was strong enough to do it, I was never going to do coding because I sucked at coding. There was never going to be a time when we were so far out of a comfort zone that I couldn't figure it out, but I knew I could figure out a lot. I guess I grew up with a little bit of that chutzpah and just kept going from there. I knew we could always figure it out because we had this strong network there of people we could rely on. There was a risk reward kind of calculation that we were doing there. If we really failed, which we weren't going to do, but if we really failed, was it going to be catastrophic? We would figure it back out. We were never going to drop the ball so much that somebody was going to die. We were going to lose a ton of money for the government. And if we lost it, it was never supposed to be a firm. It was never supposed to be a moneymaker for me. But it didn't matter if we fell on our face because what's the alternative? I just didn't have a job.
One thing I love about your story is that you have a PhD. You are extremely deep on a specific topic.
Yes.
Yet you felt comfortable being a mile wide, inch deep in your jobs and relying on the depth of others and knowing whether to trust those others.
That was key as well. Yeah, for sure. And look, we got a mile deep on the specific things we did when we needed to get a mile deep on them. So we were a mile wide, an inch deep, and then we would deep dive into the issues as we needed to.
What motivated you to keep going?
Well, I don't know. It's funny, and I talk about this in the book. I tend to get on a path and keep my head down and keep going and going and going. I think that is to my benefit, but also to my detriment sometimes. There was always another mountain to climb, and it was like, yeah, let's try this. Let's keep going. Okay, we can do that. And then honestly, at some point, sold the company at 18 years after we had started our first contract. So it'd taken a long time and we had climbed a whole bunch of mountains, right? We got to $100 million in annual revenue, which is ridiculous. From that first year, we were $70,000 in annual revenue, 700 the next year, probably 1.5 the year after that. So we grew
10 times, doubling.
But it was small numbers. It was great, but it was slow incremental growth. And honestly, we got so many people turning to us and saying, you're doing it wrong. You're not growing fast enough. You should take outside capital. You should scale. You should this. You should that, whatever it was. And the one thing I think I did probably better than anything else was to trust my own gut in what we did, what was comfortable for us and what was right for us. Because we heard over and over from every corner of everything, you can't do that. That's not the right way to do it. You're doing it wrong. We did it in the way that made sense to us. We did it in a way that truly hit our own ethical responsibilities first and foremost, and our reason for being in there, which was putting good government into practice. And then the rest came along with it. It was just, yeah, let's try this. It was at each point when we faced these turning points, which there were 5 or 6 places in the history of the firm where it was like a big turning point. The big one being when we went from small business to very not small business, pretty much overnight with a $200 million contract award. There was a lot of planning that went into that, but it was like, if we don't get this, we'll get something else. It's fine. Once we got it, I remember calling one of my mentors and said, we just got the big contract. We got a $200 million contract. And he was like, ooh, you're like the dog that caught the car, aren't you? We knew that we had to figure it out. And then we did. And we made it work. And then it was like, okay, what's next? But then at some point, and this is the tipping point that I hit, was I don't want to climb the next mountain. We can. And everyone was telling us, now you have to climb the next mountain. Now you're a $100 million firm. You can get to 250. You can get to 500. That was the point where you said, how do I keep going? That was the point where I looked and I said, we can keep going, but I don't want to. So up until then, I was like, yeah, let's go. Then at some point, it just stopped being fun. It stopped being interesting. I still loved doing it. I still loved my entire team. But the idea, the thought of doing it again, I was like, I can't do the next level. Somebody else can do it better than I can. And so that was when we stopped climbing.
What was it like to win well, you said it was $200 million contract?
Yes, single award.
Base and 4 years?
At the time, it was a base and I'm trying to remember. It was an IDIQ that had a 5-year ordering period. And so, yeah, it was supposed to be 200 million. It ended up getting extended and there was a whole long thing. So we're still performing the contract.
Did you expect to win it? Was it high probability? You would have been shocked if you lost it.
So we knew that there were 3 of us that were going to be players in this, and maybe one other that kind of came out of nowhere. I think other people were a little shocked that we were players, which is fine because I always like being underestimated. Did we know we were going to win it? Absolutely not. Did we know we had a shot at winning it? Absolutely. We built the right team. We built the right way. We priced it well. We wrote a beautiful proposal. I look back on that proposal every once in a while and I'm like, man, oh man, that was a thing of beauty. So we made it almost impossible for them to choose anyone else. But then we got the award. I screamed out loud when the contracting officer, who I've known forever, called me and I said, oh my gosh, that was really unprofessional of me. And she's like, no, I'm so excited for you too. But then it got protested and then protested again and then protested again. It went all the way up to the Court of Federal Claims. And there were all sorts of silly things within those protests. There was never a point where we know we have it and then we just executed it. But it was touch and go for most of the time.
How long was the protest period?
I think it probably 8 or 9 months by the end of the time, which was great because it gave us time. At that point, we knew that the protest was spurious. All 2 of the firms, the other 2 firms that were in the down select that protested us, one of them once, one of them 3 times, we knew that the grounds were spurious. We knew we were going to win. That was the time that it got really easy to turn around and be like, okay, so we're doubling down, getting ready. We're investing everything to make sure that we execute this. So it was great because they gave us the chance to actually execute even more effectively than we would have without the protest.
How'd you keep the key leaders engaged that whole protest time?
Really open, transparent conversations. We had built trust with the program manager and the deputy program manager that we knew were critical to stay with us. We had our internal team. I probably go to the extreme of openness and candor. Everyone thinks I'm crazy for how we've done things and how open I am with my team. But I will tell you, it built so much trust and so much buy-in that I think every one of them was like, no, we're sticking this out. We're going, we're good. I think that was probably one of the other secrets to success was just, hey guys, even when we sold the company, we told our senior team 6 months in advance, which everyone said we were crazy to do, but it worked well for us.
I love your story about trusting your gut. It looks like you've just done that over and over again. It's interesting. I have been known to be very direct, honest with people. Someone close to me thinks that I share too much and I expose too much to people, which might be true. There are some people who probably don't earn or should be in on some of the information that I'm giving. And so it's bitten me a little. But you got to I prefer to live in a life of trusting, believing in better until proven otherwise. And then I still proceed cautiously. I don't necessarily cut someone out unless it's been a really bad thing. But it's interesting having your own personal style of communicating that is different from the norm has been a differentiator for me. And people have said they like that they know that I'm incredibly honest.
Yes.
There's not something I'm holding back.
Yeah.
There's not something hidden in the shadows. It's you come to me, you're getting an answer, or I'm telling you, here's what I'm leaning towards now. And I might be changing my mind. I don't really change my mind that much, but they have a very clear sense of what that is. And I think what's interesting too, a lot of it sounds like your success has actually been about relationships and people.
Yeah. That is the secret. It's funny. I've been talking a lot about leadership lately with the book and with everything. And that's one of the reasons that I started the book, was just a deep dive into my thoughts on leadership. I've now started realizing it really boils down to a really basic prescription that is simple and still hard, which is don't be an asshole. There is so much of leadership that is be a good person, be a human being first and foremost, treat everyone like they're a human being, treat people who you disagree with like a human being, build trust with people because that's what matters most. And everything else comes out of it. We really didn't focus on metrics. Probably, funny enough, given that I'm a data person by training, I've got a PhD, taught statistics forever. We didn't drive things based on metrics. I'd never set numerical targets. I never set financial targets. I never set profit targets. In fact, I'm not sure I could have told you for most of the firm until we went to start selling the firm, what our EBITDA was, what our profit margin was. Wouldn't have known any of that.
I had to start looking at it monthly.
First of all, there was somebody who was looking at it. And I knew generally where we were in terms of how much capital we had, if we were being profitable overall. But I didn't manage to the numbers at all. We managed to what is going to get us to the next layer of growth, what is going to get us to the next layer of success. Are we continuing to provide the services that we need to the government in ways that are better than anyone else? And if we're doing that, all the rest of it comes, which again is completely topsy-turvy for anyone in business who doesn't manage to that. I know when we went out to market, our banker was like, wait, what? How do you not know these numbers off the top of your head? I'm like, I know exactly what we're doing, but I don't manage to those numbers. I know exactly what our pipeline is, but I can't tell you what the gross margin is going to be on this contract.
And the quality of your services and how your service was provided, which is your obsession, right? How are we doing for the customer, which was the government, in the best way possible that they need with the best people?
100%.
You focus on that, the rest falls into place.
It does. It really, really does. I can tell you because I was sitting and talking to every one of our customers all the time. There was not a single customer I didn't know when I was the owner of that firm. We had one stupid contract that something fell apart. It was a tiny little nothing contract. We ended up spending way more money than we made. We ended up literally paying to perform this contract because I was darn well going to get it right. And I didn't know the customer was retiring. He wasn't going to bring us along to another contract, but it was the right thing to do. We were going to make sure that we got this right. And I'll tell you, I think our customers saw it. I think our employees saw it. And I think it was the right thing to do. And it ended up probably costing us a whole lot of money and no one else would have done it. Don't care.
One of the things I want to talk about is I think people are afraid to be honest because it's perceived as being an asshole, right? So you talked about not being an asshole, but as a leader, sometimes people are in the wrong job or they're not performant, and you have to have this uncomfortable, awkward conversation. So it's easy to not be an asshole when things are going well.
That's not being an asshole, though. I learned this from my chief management officer, Heidi Snell, who is the world's greatest chief people officer, chief management officer, chief whatever. She was like everything to us. She consistently could walk into a meeting that was a contentious meeting to fire somebody, and they would walk out thanking us because it is kind to put somebody into the right place. I've watched people sit in roles with us that are not the right roles. If we are working with them and trying to figure out what the problem is and it's just not working, I would rather you be very happy and very good somewhere else. So let's figure out what's not working. Can you find somewhere else here? Or can we find you somewhere else that makes sense for you, not here? And
Right.
so when you call it out, oftentimes they're like, oh, thank God. Yeah, I've really been struggling. And so it is not kind. It is not caring to not have that conversation with someone. It is not being an asshole to have that conversation with somebody, because in the long run, you're freeing them up to actually be successful somewhere.
They need feedback, or they're very successful on this, and this is one thing that's really holding them back. They have to have that feedback. I personally have had to get comfortable having those conversations. I think it's a good practice. And as a business, like you were saying with that customer and losing the money, you also have to get the feedback from the customer of where your company is doing well, performing those services, or not doing well, and correcting. Just really having an openness of constantly having the conversations and being open to those conversations. You can smell it. You can see the body language. You can infer. But finally, you just sometimes have to be like, what is it we need to change?
I appreciate, as a leader, as well as I had lots of great mentors over the years. I just had a conversation with one of my mentors from my White House days where I was talking to him about what I'm doing now. He just stripped it all down and was like, you're being an idiot right now. And I was like, I need that. My dad, when I sent him the first chapter of my book, when I had the first part of the manuscript preliminarily written, I went in to see him. My dad's in an independent living kind of facility. He can't read very well because he's almost blind, but he read this manuscript in big type and he hands it back to me. And I was like, oh, did you like it? And he looks at me and he goes, kiddo, you're going to be competing against a bunch of insufferable authors. And I was like, well, that's good, right, Dad? Because I'm not insufferable. And he just looked at me and went, uh-huh. He meant I was insufferable. I gotta tell you, it was the best thing in the world for me to hear. It sucks to hear your father saying your writing is insufferable, but he was right. The book is dramatically better for the massive edit that we went back and did. I really was centering myself too much in the book because it's my book and I'm writing, but he was right. That's not unkind. It is not being an asshole. It is caring enough about someone to say, I'm going to invest time and make it uncomfortable for me to tell you the hard feedback. And if I care enough about you, that's my job. And if I don't care enough about you, I think that's the kind of asshole from a leader, if you don't care enough about your people to give them that challenging feedback. Those hard conversations are exactly what kindness is.
Yeah. I feel like the dancing around is so awkward.
Yeah. And it's not fair for them. I don't know him personally, but I follow him and I've talked to him a few times on LinkedIn. Shola Richards, that talks specifically about kindness. And he talks all about this. I love the way he speaks about it.
I'll have to check him out. Before I hit record, we were talking about transactional versus non-transactional relationships. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So Adam Grant has a great book called Give and Take. I read a lot of books and I actually don't finish most of them because I'm like, yeah, I got your point. This one was one of those that was game changing, not because it said anything new, but it reinforced the way that I think about the world and gave research behind it, which I always like. I think there are people who are takers, right? That they go in and they're like, I will get everything. I will suck everything out of everyone. We all know that those people don't do well. We all know that those are bad relationships that we stay away from. But there's a matching relationship where it's transactional, right? You do this for me, I'll do this for you. I'm keeping score of what you're doing and what I'm doing. I want to make sure that there's a fairness there. And that's always what I assumed was the way you're supposed to do things. I didn't do things that way because I just never wanted to keep score. I wanted to be able to give to wherever I gave and not worry about, am I up, am I down, who's getting something. In reading this book, it reinforced that idea that these transactional relationships, these one for one, I'm going to keep score, really hinder the ability for these deep, meaningful relationships when you are transactional, when you are non-transactional, when you don't keep score, that's where the deep relationships come. You're going to get screwed over every once in a while, right? You're going to have somebody stab you in the back if you're non-transactional and they become transactional. In the long run, you still win out because you've got better relationships, you've got more meaningful ways of doing things, and you get more in the long run for the fact that you're doing the right thing by your entire village. I started realizing there are people who are transactional, and there have been people who have stabbed me in the back over the years. Each time somebody does that, at this point in my life, I'm going to double down on the non-transactional relationships I have to reinforce this behavior of non-transactional really does mean something.
You talk in your book about people who are your tribe and in your circle. What are some of the things that you've looked for or have helped you in being a judge of character?
You know what? I'm not always a perfect judge of character. I've let people into my inner circle that have turned out to be not great. I tend to, you asked me before we hit record, have I ever mapped out my inner circle? And I haven't, specifically because I don't even know how many people would be in my inner circle. I collect people because I love people and I love talking to people and I love having conversations. And so I have no idea. And I've got a really tight set of really close friends that kind of are an overlapping Venn diagrams of personal and professional, and over here supporting me in all of the boards that I do versus Power Women in Tampa versus GovCon. They tend to be fairly overlapping, but I have no idea how many people are in my inner circle. And I wouldn't be able to map it if I tried. I don't tend to do the trust but verify thing. I tend to do the, if you give me the heebie-jeebies up front, I'm not going to pull you in. I'm going to push you and give a little bit of time and space to let you prove to me that there's not something wrong there. I'm going to let you in and let you fail. And if it bites me, it bites me. In the long run, I do better because of that, because I've got this great, amazing, huge village of people who are cheering for me. When I put out the book and so many people were like, yes, we're so excited for you. That's why we made the bestseller list, because so many people were like, let me buy from you. I want to hear what you have to say. It's because I gathered all these people for so long around me and we just had these great relationships. So every once in a while I get stabbed in the back for it and I really don't care.
Have you heard of the Harvard longevity study?
Yeah, of course.
They say the people that were the happiest was the quality of their relationships.
Totally. I think there are times when I have had terrible ends to terrible relationships. But for the most part, I've had some ridiculously good relationships that have lasted me for a reason, a season, a lifetime, right? So it doesn't mean that all of my relationships have stuck around forever. But I've had great individual conversations and then never again with somebody. It fuels my fire. It fills my cup. Those are great, even if they're only one time.
Yeah.
I don't know. I tend to look at relationships differently than a lot of people. And I think that has probably been one of the secrets to my success.
Going back to your mentors and advisors, did you have a list of Did you have an advisory board?
No, never formal.
Never formal.
We had a few people that we paid to be advisors to the firm near the end, much more so for more credibility building than anything else. So a couple of GOs, former GOs that were there. But again, I gathered people around me and I was open about what my challenges were. I don't know that most of them would call themselves my mentors. I would.
It's a relationship. That's
It
hard.
is.
It's hard to have a one-off thing.
Yes.
That's a piece of advice.
Exactly. I talk a lot about Sherpas in the book who really get in there and pack along with you and walk the path that is maybe a different path they've walked before, but is a path that they can help guide you on. That's a really hard thing to do. There are very few people who have the time, space, and energy to do that. But I got lucky. I had so many great people in my life, and I am incredibly honored to have so many of them still in my life.
Do you have a definition difference between advisor and mentor?
Yeah, you know what? It's kind of overlapping Venn diagrams of all these different sponsors.
A blank Venn diagram.
I like Venn diagrams. I think in Venn diagrams. I'm not sure that the definitions matter. It is what you need from that person at that time. I have some people that I can call on for very specific things. I have some people that I can call on in the middle of the night for anything. I'm not sure if those are mentors or friends or all. It is knowing what you need and knowing who you can call on for each of those needs, I think, is the thing that matters.
What has been a piece of advice that you've gotten from an advisor, mentor, then Sherpa combined that has made a very big impact on you?
One of my favorite mentors, one of my most important mentors, is a retired general officer, Mike Jones. He said all the time, and every time he said it, I wanted to throttle him. He said, success is not no problems, it's new problems. And every time he said it was in the middle of a huge problem, of course. I was like, sir, I just want no problems for a little while. He's like, yeah, too bad, because success is not no problems. Once you figure out how to fix something, you move on to the next thing. And when that thing pops up again, you know how to manage it. Every time you're growing, you've got a new problem.
Did you take it as you're doing well then?
That's certainly what he meant by it, right? I understand you're complaining about the problem, but it means that you're successful. And now we have to figure out how to deal with this problem. You've got the tools in your toolkit. You just have to figure out what we're doing. There were times when I'm like, I just want to sit in a corner and color for a little while. Can we stop? You never get to the point of no problems, right? That's just not the way life works. Once I started realizing that was more and more of my headspace was, I don't want any more problems. That was when I realized we had to sell, because it wasn't fun for me anymore to tackle those problems. I wanted new challenges that were totally different than the ones that we were facing.
Did this correspond with anything in your personal life?
I'm a caregiver to my parents. My mom just actually passed last month, and I was a caregiver to both of my parents, now to my dad. I have teenagers and bigger kids, bigger problems. It was more, we'd been doing it for 18 years. And there was something in me that said, you know what? I've already proven it. I have nothing more to prove to anyone, including myself. We absolutely could do it at the next level. Don't want to. I wanted to try something different. I've been doing this for 18 years. Never intended to do it for even a year, much less. It was just supposed to be a catch-all until I could get home. So there were just so many other things that seemed like they would be fun to try.
Was it scary to even admit it to yourself and start making a switch and then the actual switch?
Yes and no. So I tell the story of standing, and I'm looking at my whiteboard right now as I'm talking to you.
I knew you have a whiteboard in your office.
Of course I do, with lots of Venn diagrams. In fact, there are Venn diagrams on the whiteboard right now. I stood in front of this blank whiteboard and I was doing this exercise that I do and I talk about in the book, where I was trying to figure out all the different options on the table. In the book, I called it the lines in the water exercise. I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, okay, what are the options on the table now that we're hitting this 100 million mark? Where are we going to go? How are we going to do this? Before I actually started drawing anything, I was just standing there looking at this blank whiteboard. And my arm literally, almost of its own volition, just started drawing across the top of it. It said, just because the mountain's in front of you doesn't mean you have to climb it. I kid you not. I'm like, wait, what? Who just wrote that? Because it wasn't me. I stepped back, and one of my mentors who had passed away, who had put me on the path after graduate school, not to do the academic path. And I was like, okay, I got it. Hearing his voice in my head, and it just came out through my hand. And I stepped back, and it was such a smack in the face moment that it was scary to think about how I was going to tell my husband, how I was going to tell my business partner, how I was going to tell my team at some point about this decision. It was so clearly the gut reaction of me that I didn't really have a second guessing of it. Then it was, how do we do this effectively? How do we know that I don't want to be on this path anymore?
And what's it been like?
It's been so much fun. It's hard. This was my first child before I ever had kids, right? So selling was hard. It was the right thing to do. And now looking at what's happening in the world, I am so grateful that we sold exactly when we did, because it would have been very challenging. It's freed me up to do some other stuff within the world that I think is important. But it was really hard to sit and be an employee of a firm that I had started and run.
How long were you an employee for?
I was committed for 3 years. They had me working full-time for probably a year and a half, and then kind of slowly phased out, which was great for both them and for me.
Like senioritis, where you were just trying your hardest to show up?
So much like trying hard to show up. It was trying to figure out what my place was and my role was, because I had been the leader of this team for so long and somebody else was doing it. He was doing it differently than I was, which is totally fair and totally legitimate. But that's really hard to see. And it's really hard to say. I literally sat on my hands. It made me ground myself to say, shut up, don't talk. You are not the CEO anymore. That was hard. And that's one of the reasons that I sat down and said, I'm going to write, because I really want to think about leadership and how we got where we were. Because again, everyone kept saying, you guys are crazy. You're doing it the wrong way. This is not the way you're supposed to do it. We just kept going. And we did really well by saying, it might not be the way you're going to do it, but it's the way we're doing it. And we're going to make sure that we're not breaking any rules, right? Which is where Unruly comes from. So I really wanted to get my head around, how did we do that? And at first it was literally just therapy for me to just write. And then I was like, I think this is actually something. I'm going to put this on out there in the world. And I was able to do that. And I got incredibly lucky to get a phenomenal editor and a phenomenal publisher who helped guide me through this whole process. So I'm learning a totally new game. I suck at some of it. I suck at the social media stuff of it.
No, it's the authenticity and being there. It's so interesting that today what people want to see is real.
Yes.
They don't know what's real. They don't want perfectly polished.
That was never my problem. I was never going to be perfectly polished. I definitely not perfectly polished. That's just not who I am. But I got caught up in the game of the algorithm and the this and the that. And how do you make a reel? And how do my daughter's showing me how to do this? And my son.
Are there TikTok dances of you out there?
I will tell you that I worked with a PR firm for a while. And it was a good friend of mine who ran the PR firm. And I was like, you are never getting me to dance on TikTok. She's like, I promise you, we will never make you dance on TikTok. And I did not. And I am not on TikTok. But even LinkedIn. And I just posted yesterday or the day before, and it hit a nerve with people, funny enough. But I was like, I am done with this damn algorithm. And the first line of it was, go home, LinkedIn, you're drunk. I'm just going to show up. And if y'all like it, y'all like it. If you don't, but I'm done trying to play the games of LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook. I'm going to throw stuff out there because I like writing, and that's all we're going to do. If you like the pictures that I take, great. If you like the thought leadership I have, great. If not, then I'll be shouting into the void and fine. I am not playing this social media content calendar and pillars.
It was something new for you to learn, though.
It was fun. I had to unruly myself. And that's what I said. I'm not doing this anymore because this is not the game I'm going to play. I'm going to play the game my own way. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, the stakes are pretty low.
Yeah. Now, for other small business owners out there, government contractors focused on defense who provide services, what are your top 3 pieces of advice on how to really grow a business? Because so many people start, and there's a lot of companies 10 or under, 25 and under, but getting 50 to 100, I'm talking about people. What are things to get to those next mountains and to climb the mountains? What have you seen be really successful?
I think there's a couple of things. I talk in the book about blue water, red water, which is the blue ocean strategy by Kim and Marlebone, I think, and black water, which is don't go there because it's crossing ethical boundaries. You've got to find what your distinguisher is. And it cannot be you're a small business. And it shouldn't be you're cheaper than everyone else, because that's a race to the bottom that is a terrible place to be. So you've got to figure out what you're bringing to the table that is different than everybody else. If that's relationships, great. If that's knowledge, great. If that's a new product along with your service, great. If that's honestly being able to get through the contracting process easier and have your easy button be available. At one point, we became what we called the flip of choice on a contract vehicle that we had, Oasis, that there were a bunch of firms who had grown out of it. And so we just became really good at being a prime contractor who would take a partnership with the firms who had already had the work. We had a great proposal shop. We had great past performance. We had good rates. We knew how to be a prime. We knew how to write stuff. We knew how to run a contract. That became one of our distinguishers and one of the ways that we grabbed on Oasis $200 million in 1 year in new contract awards because of this strategy. We were better. So find that distinguisher, number one. Number two, understand all of the pieces of government contracting. And I say there's three. There has to be a bona fide need that the government needs, hopefully that they want you to perform. You have to have the right funding at the right time and the right amount, right color of money, and then you have to have a vehicle. And those are the three things you have to do.
Let's repeat them. It's the need,
Bona fide need,
money,
and the vehicle. So it's they need you and hopefully only you. They've got the money to pay you and they've got a way to get you on contract.
Then you got to have people.
Yes, in the long run, but that's where bona fide need comes in because they want you. They know you can do this. Then the execution absolutely is separate from that. To get a contract in the government, those are the three things you need. And you need to understand how to get to each of those three things. If you can figure that out, and there are plenty of different ways to get to each of one of those, but you have to have all three of them. A lot of firms struggle with the bona fide need. A lot of firms struggle, or the government generally itself struggles with the funding, particularly now budgets. We're never terribly good at being set with all of the different machinations going on. You don't know where the money is going to be even at the end of the fiscal year. It's that vehicle that tends to be the thing that is the hardest for firms that have the relationships and can identify the money or the need. Then they get stuck on the contract vehicle. And you have to have 3, 4, 5, 6 different options. I mean, we used 8A a lot, but when somebody would say, I don't like 8As.
Right.
Great. Here's another one. Oh, I don't do that one. Great.
Right.
Here's a third one. Great. Here's a prime contractor that has a vehicle. So when we got stuck, you have to have the perseverance to just hit a wall and you go, can I dig underneath the wall? Can I go to the right of the wall? Can I go to the left of the wall? Can I go over? Or do I have to just pound my way through that wall? But you don't stop at the wall.
Yeah. You have a third one?
I think that's the third one is just don't stop. Figure out a way to make it easier for them to say yes. Do their homework for them so that it becomes dramatically easier to say yes than it is to say no.
What did you do when you got down and dejected? Because that's why people stop, right?
Yeah.
Not everyone's upbeat and cheery and I'm getting these losses and I've sent 3 emails and I've knocked on the door and I've followed up. What is it that you did to tell yourself to keep going in the face of adversity?
I tend to be a fairly positive person, so I think it was a little easier for me. I joke in the book, and I joked for years, there was 4 words that fueled more of my growth than anything else. And it was, oh, really? Watch me. When somebody said I couldn't do something, I would take it as a challenge. When we failed, let's learn from it and figure it out. Here's the thing. I would look around at all of these firms that were winning, and I'm like, they're no smarter than me. They're definitely no better than me. They're not as moral as I am. And I'm not going to let those jerks who are cutting corners and cheating, I'm not letting them win. So I'm going to keep coming at them. And sometimes they're going to win, sure. But in the long run, I'm proving that the good people can actually do good work.
Yeah. That's partly why I implemented the CRM. Last year, I actually wrote on a rock process, which is not sexy, but in the long run, the more we got down to how we're doing things, we became efficient and effective. It is rare that you're going to sell somebody almost anything and they're going to say, yes, I would love to buy on the first. A building of the repetition. It is for me a process of, did I talk to that customer? When was the last time I talked to that customer? So the CRM is helping me keep on a pace of, these are the customers. You have to meet with them at this pace. When did you last meet with them? What was your last touch point? What is the engagement? Have we asked for feedback on our performance at least once a quarter? Are we doing that? Because it's a lot across multiple different contracts to keep track of all of those things going on, but it is so critically important to ensure that we are focused on the relationship. And my company, a lot of my peers were engineers. We're starting from an engineering perspective. So we're talking about a comfort in building technology or sending and doing something. Then typically in coding, you do something and something results.
Right.
You send an email that goes into the void and they don't respond, or they say yes and then they don't respond.
Yeah.
And getting to know and have that relationship with a person that you stand out from the pack, that they have a sense of who you are without an exact amount of data sent to them. It's a level of trust that they have with you,
Totally.
and flipping it to the people and the relationships, and to learn how to have better relationships, because that is behavior you can learn as well, how to improve your interactions with people and your consistency of interaction so that it is a deeper, trusted, non-transactional relationship.
I got to tell you, at some point, I got overwhelmed by the relationships, right? Because I have a lot of deep relationships, but I don't have very much brain power anymore, particularly because there were just so many of them and because there was so much going on. That CRM, or that ability to track it not in your own brain, drives a relationship. Putting it in paper, putting it into an electronic kind of tracker actually makes it more effective to be an organic relationship than it would be. I just got a message last night and somebody was like, "You changed my life." I texted one of my friends and I'm like, "How do I know this person?" Oh gosh. They told me and I was like, "Oh God, yes." I would have had to go back 20 years to do a CRM to be able to track all of this. But if you can do that, it allows for you to be out of the failures of your own brain power.
Let me ask you a couple quick questions, more for the small business community. Number one, focus on a specific customer or diversify.
What I would say is yes, both.
Which one?
I always look at things as a quadrant. If you are focused on a specific customer doing the specific thing you've done for them before, that's super easy to sit in that space. You can come down more toward the XY axis by saying, okay, it's the same customer, but a slightly different product or service, or a much different product or service, but it's the same customer. Or I'm going to transition customers, but go into the same product or service. Those are fairly easy next steps to go into. If you are trying to go into a new customer with a new offering, don't try. It's not worth it. But there are ways of opening that aperture. When you get too concentrated in one customer and one service, something happens within the government, which it inevitably does if you're doing government contracting or any other customer that you're looking at. Something in that industry changes and you're flat-footed. But if you've opened the aperture, then you've expanded without going so far outside your comfort zone that you're not able to do it well.
The other question I have is, you're a really good subcontractor to priming and to having significant primes. What amount of energy or what percentage did you say, let's take this and invest in having a proposal and business machine, and we're going to put out this much per year?
It's really, what is the way that you have the best opportunity to continue to grow and serve? And so I have seen firms that are almost entirely subcontract, and that's great for them. It works really, really well for them. The way we grew, we had almost all prime contracts from the outset, right? Outside of the first couple of years where we brought the customer and we just needed a vehicle. So we leveraged their vehicle for a little while until we could get to our own vehicle. We almost always had prime contracts. That's certainly beneficial in a lot of ways, right? But it's really hard because of that vehicle piece. It's this chicken and egg thing with a vehicle. How do I get that customer on a vehicle that I own? Putting the pieces in place to get some prime contracts, to get more prime contracts, to get bigger vehicles, to find the Sibbers or the 8As or the whatever vehicles that allow you to have a direct award capacity. There are so many different strategies around that, and all of them may be viable. None of them may be viable, and none of them are wrong unto themselves. It is just where you find yourself. Honestly, if you're sitting in a subcontractor role, if you've got the power position in that subcontractor role, there were plenty of times we brought stuff to the prime. It was very clearly our relationship, our contract, and we just needed the prime to sit there. That is a much better position to be in, even if you need them as prime and you can't get your own prime contract, than you sitting on a contract where you don't have control over what the customer thinks of the team, how the customer is going to make decisions. That puts you in a really different position when you're negotiating your subcontract, when you're making sure that you have follow-on work. I don't have a problem with any firm being 100% subcontractor if they've got everything else in place correctly. I think there are plenty of prime contract firms out there that are steps away from falling apart. I don't think it has anything to do with what your mix of contracts are. I think it has everything to do with how you've set up your firm and where your long-term revenue is going to come from and how certain you are of that.
Let's talk about your personal life. So you're married and you have 2 kids and you've been married this whole time.
I have.
That's impressive. What have you done throughout starting your business and growing your business to $100 million in annual revenue to maintain a focus on your family and yourself?
Myself has not been a good focus, so I will freely admit that. I talk a lot about this in the book. There's a whole chapter on work-life equilibrium because I don't think balance ever exists. But I think there is a give and take that happens. There is a ruthless curating of priorities that happens within your life. So my kids were always my priority, no question, no doubt. But every single thing in their lives weren't always my priority. It didn't mean that I didn't love them and they weren't my top challenge or my top priority. But I say this over and over again because it's easy since they're teenagers now. They don't care about me talking about when they were little. When they were little and they would go to Spirit Week at school, their costumes for Spirit Week were not my priority. But I had to talk myself out of looking at all of these other parents who had these adorable costumes for their kids and say, I chose not to make that my priority and my kids are going to be fine. It's really not a big deal that they have all one color on and they went as an orange crayon instead of this whole head to toe costume that took 3 months to figure out what they were going to wear for this day. As long as you figure out what your own priorities are and ruthlessly curate the things that you can and can't do, you can get to some semblance of equilibrium. It's never balance and it's never perfect. There are times when my husband took short shrift in most of what we did because he's an adult and he's able to handle himself and whatever. We did then prioritize our relationship at times to make sure that it stayed okay. But I just had to look at what matters right now and what parts of that matter the most.
What did you do to take care of yourself, though?
Probably not nearly. And ended up in the ICU.
Answer the question, Lauren.
I ended up in the ICU with sepsis at one point. So I did not do nearly enough. But I have now, and that's one of the reasons that I said, okay, this is not working anymore. So it took a lot to reprioritize myself. But I have really good friends and I have a really good supportive village. Even taking a night out with them or making sure that my group of girlfriends from my White House days and I went on a weekend, that definitely recharged me. But then I found what really did recharge me and I made sure that I was doing that. A lot of that was still through work. It was just sitting down and making sure that I talked to the employees and then I knew what we were doing with them and how they were doing well. That actually recharged me more than anything else.
Yeah, there's a great book I read that talks about at work. There's 2 books and I'll put them in the show notes, but one is about making sure you're working not at just something that you're good at, because you can be good at something and not really enjoy it and it drags you, but learning to work within your strength and in your joy.
Yes.
And as you grow professionally, giving people work that doesn't bring you joy and drags you down.
Yes.
And the bottom quadrant is like stuff you're terrible at and should never do. But plenty of us are good at many things. To keep going, you need to remove the things that are not energizing you and are instead a drag. You also talk a bit about therapy in your book, which I think is interesting.
I have a PhD in psychology. I'm a huge believer in therapy.
Have you ever found it helpful for you professionally?
So I have not done any formal business coaching or anything like that where I specifically reached out and said, you are an external coach. I am going to pay you to be an external coach. But I had mentors who served that purpose for sure. You get in your own head way too much. Everyone does. There's some really good research around the fact that your friends really can't pull you out of your head in the same way. They're great and you need friends and you need really smart friends who call you on stuff. But that therapeutic relationship, that professional relationship that you pay for is by research shown to actually have a very big difference in the way that you look at it. So I am a huge believer. I don't care if it's actual like PhD psychologist, social worker, executive coach, whatever it is, but paying someone to get yourself out of your head is very meaningful.
I have some quick questions for you. Number one, what is your favorite book that you recommend to people outside of your own?
I wouldn't have even done that. I would say either Adam Grant's Give and Take, or another one that really hit me was The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, particularly the chapter on when is enough enough.
Yeah, that's great for defining success for yourself. What resources do you need? What financial resources do you need to live the life that you really want?
Yep.
And it's interesting too, because they say most people always feel like they never have enough. If you ask anybody at any level, they always want double what they have.
We actually did it. Again, this is where I was paying one of our advisors who really was my business coach. And he did an exercise with me where it was like, what do you need? Not what do you want? What do you actually need? And then let's see how we get you there and whatever. And I needed a whole lot less than I think most people would say that they wanted or needed. But it was, okay, wait a second, I'm already there. So what am I doing? And what do I want to be doing to get there?
Yeah. And the one thing you can't buy more of is time.
Yep.
Actually, that's not fair. Sometimes you can buy time and that you can have other people do work for you.
Oh, and I did that forever.
Like knowing the laundry, cleaning the house, things like that, that give you more time with others. Right. They take care of things to give you the ability to focus.
That was the other secret to any success, was outsourcing everything possible.
Yeah.
It's the only way to do it.
I find it's hard to make the space for it, but I find giving myself time to work out in whatever way, if it's going on a walk with my friend or going to yoga, it is difficult for me to make that space. I have found I only really make the space when it involves another person. Yeah, I'm very good if there's like somebody there waiting for me. It has something I can't cancel.
So that's how you know yourself, to know that's what you're going to do to prioritize it. Yeah.
Is there anything else before we wrap up that you want to share with the audience?
The biggest thing I would say, everyone asks me what my biggest piece of advice is, and I say consistently, just find your village. It has to be a village that is unconditionally supportive. And I'll add to that, watching some of the stuff that's going on in the world right now, not just unconditionally supportive, but unconditionally moral. They do what they say, they believe strongly in their convictions, and they follow through on those convictions. And they are there for you when you're down, and they can pick you back up. But also, a lot of the people I've seen are really good at turning around and saying, I'll be there for you when you're down, but then I'm going to cut you down when you've actually done well. So you need the people who are willing to cheer from the rooftops for you when you've done well, at the same time picking you up when you're down, and doing it all with a moral compass that meets yours.
That's great. Now, final question. Tell us something about yourself that might surprise others.
I almost joined the circus in between college and graduate school. No kidding.
I believe you. What would you have been in the circus?
I was going to be a dancer. A family friend of ours was a trapeze artist. No kidding. After college, he went to Club Med and started playing on the trapeze. He went to Club Med as a graduation gift and stayed on the trapeze and became a catcher, and then left Club Med to go join Ringling Brothers. He had me almost convinced that I was going to go be a dancer in Ringling Brothers. And then I got into Dartmouth and I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to do Dartmouth instead.
Have you ever been on a trapeze?
I've been on a trapeze, but I was definitely not going to be on the trapeze. I was not strong enough to do that. The dancers in the circus are just kind of run around. They don't do much specific.
Well, I think that seems in line with what I know of your personality, which is you like to bring a lot of joy to people.
I like that. I like that. It was crap. I thought my mom was going to die. It's like, no, you're not going to the circus. Absolutely not. It was fun to think about for a little while.
Well, Lauren, thank you so much for sharing a big part of who you are and your advice to others and being an inspiration and codifying it in your great book, Unruly, with lots of great pieces of advice from persevering to understanding the policies to advocating when to change policies if needed, to give examples. It's been wonderful to share this afternoon with you.
Thank you so much, Shana. I really appreciate you having me on.
Thanks so much for listening to today's podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please share it with friends and family. If you'd like to follow us on social media, you can find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook under the Outspoken Podcast. Thanks again, and until next time.
God, we didn't go too long.
Okay, now I saw it. It said you started recording, and I see the red dot. So, all right.
I don't want to interrupt that, but I don't know.
That's really funny.
I don't know.